Welcome, everybody, to episode 18 of the Big Ben and Friends podcast. I am your host, Big Ben Ortmanns, and this week we're going to be getting to know one of my friends from the pro wrestling business. As you can tell, obviously a lot better here. He is a gift to the professional wrestling, in my opinion. The professional wrestling business, rather.
Cut that part out.
He is one of the hardest working dudes I know. He is a guy that has taken all of our hearts via Instagram, via his 1-minute videos. He has been the guy who has essentially mastered what Instagram and social media was supposed to do. He's that guy who, when you're having a bad day, you just go to Instagram and you just see what Big Rick's up to. And probably 9 times out of 10, he's going to drop some dimes on you that's going to make your day a whole lot better. This guy is such a hard worker that without even telling me that during the pandemic, he drove from where he lives to our gym. Got to tell you, that's probably an hour each way for the sole purpose to film a video for Instagram to pop me. And I thought that was the greatest damn thing I've ever seen in my life. This guy here is going to be taking over the independents here as soon as we get back. He was on the verge of doing it before the pandemic even happened. And again, I cannot say enough good things about this guy because as much as he's going to be taking over the business, in my opinion, he has one of the best traits that you can have as a professional wrestler, and he is an amazing human being. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my buddy and one of my wrestling sons, Pretty Ricky Willdy. How are you doing, Big Rick?
Doing fantastic. I'm so happy to be here. This is such a good way to start my day. I'm very excited about it. You're far too kind, though, and now I'm a little worried I'm not going to be able to live up to all that hype.
You know, everybody says that, and then everybody just kind of forgets about it as soon as we start chatting. But, I mean, the reality is all of those things are true. I mean, I remember very, very vividly, I don't know if that's the word.
Nope.
It's the morning. I'm getting my coffee in. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that word. But I do remember there was a certain time where, I mean, I was kind of always on the lookout for you regardless, just because I'm sure we'll get into this, but you back in the day before you kind of started to bloom off into this amazing character that you now have blossomed into, and you were a referee, and I don't know if a lot of people know that, but at the same time, while you were training and you were doing all that stuff, you were a very, very good friend to one of my very, very good friends, and you really, really helped him during a kind of a unhealthy time in his life, and that's something that I've always appreciated, and so I've always kind of kept an eye on you. But the second that I saw you started dropping these videos and be kind of coming this new version of yourself, I guess, really finding yourself, because it's weird. You say character, but when you really get to know Ricky, it's hard to say that there's much of a balance. They say the best character is always yourself times 10, and I really think that you've nailed this one. But I've always been paying attention to your stuff, and the second that I kind of started to see you put those videos out, I knew immediately that you were onto something, but I had no idea that we were going to get to where we are right now. So I guess, like, where the hell did all of this fucking come from? I know that's a hardball of a first question, but god damn, like, what happened?
So the honest truth behind it all, and I want to just say this about Brady, because Brady's a great guy. But when I first met him, it wasn't like I was trying to go out of my way to be a nice guy or trying to help him out in any kind of situation. He was just somebody who was willing to treat me with respect when I got in, because I'm not sure how many of your listeners are aware of this, but there is a mentality of young guys in the wrestling business just kind of being a dime a dozen, and their names aren't overly important, and trying to treat them as if they're a human being isn't necessarily a persistent thought for some people who are in the business. So when I was just a young, plucky guy trying to get in there, Brady was always very nice to me, was willing to talk to me, was willing to give me advice and help. So he was somebody that I had a lot of respect for, because he was willing to treat me as if I was a person, which isn't overly common at that stage when you're coming up. So the fact that Brady has looked out for me since then and has put a good word for me out there has always been appreciated. And in terms of the videos, it was a matter of me and Hardbody went on tour, and we were just the youngest, dumbest guys who were willing to do that because there was no money in it, and there really wasn't a tremendous amount of experience other than the fact that we get to do those matches every single night. So for, I think it was a 6-week tour we went on. The first tour we had ever been on was in the middle of winter up north. It was as bad the conditions can possibly be. And if you're not going to get deterred in those situations, like since then, things have only gotten more comfortable. There's been actual money on the table. So it's like, yeah, I only want to be more a part of this because as much as I love those tours, I love them because they were terrible. And it was a brutal experience that I really felt like kind of shaped me and maybe decide, do you really want this? You know what I mean? I think a good test for a lot of young guys would be watch Beyond the Mat and really pick out just how depressing it all is. And if you can sit there at the end of it and go, yeah, I still want to do this, then maybe you have something for it. You have to be prepared for just how terrible it's all going to get.
That's such an amazing answer. Because all of that is very true. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen Beyond the Mat. I think that I tried to scare myself out of getting into wrestling at one point, and it wasn't working. I was exactly the same thing. I understand you're too stupid to understand how devastating of a life that you're actually about to enter it truly is. But it's funny because now that you mention that, I have to preface this because anybody listening to this, I have to let everybody know, if you haven't, excuse me, I think I've mentioned this before in a previous episode. We've done this podcast before. We've tried to film an episode, Ricky and myself. I was an asshole and forgot to plug my mic in. So we did an entire interview and I fucked it up. So I'm a big dumb dummy.
No shit.
So I'm gonna try to not like talk about the same stuff, but at the same time, it's weird. I want to pull some stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I don't remember. This is one of those things that I kind of completely forgot about because I forgot that those were the first sets of videos that you and Hardbody started doing, where you started doing like this weird feud across Northern Ontario. Now, I've done a Northern Ontario tour before. What was your experience like on those things?
I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I want to say that because me and Hardbody were both, like, we were just friends. It was both of us getting started. It was the first thing we had ever really done, so we had each other the entire time, and anytime things got really bad, we kind of were able to go to each other and be like, yeah, this is awful. But beyond that, it was just a tremendous amount of fun because it felt like for the first time, you know, we're actually doing something. We're on the road, and yes, there's no money in it, and yes, we are taking quite a beating, but you know, you have to start somewhere, and we felt like we were getting our foot in the door. In terms of that feud on social media, me and Hardbody were just kind of bored in the van and something to do. The people we were feuding against, Jesse Bieber and Rex Atkins, were in the van, but wanted nothing to do with what we were doing. So we were just taking pictures of them when they weren't paying attention, and we were tagging them and everything and annoying the hell out of them. But it started to get buzz, you know, people were paying attention to it. So we had to lean deeper and deeper into it.
That's actually, I'm so glad that you actually recognize that, just because the reality is even though you're up north, that's the thing, is like you were putting this stuff out on social media, and maybe it was only up north that we're getting to see the matches, but like it was everybody else that was getting to see the feud. So in like a weird, like this really weird way, I can't remember if this is exactly what happened, but I almost feel like if this was done correctly, you guys could have just house showed that entire tour and then brought the blow off to that match back home into like St. Catharines or something like that, to one of those like WrestleLusion shows.
I mean, that certainly makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. I certainly believe if a promoter had the foresight to be willing to do something like that, it would have been a great idea. But typically, and this is just a common thread throughout my entire career, I am picked up to kind of be put in a spot to be used as an idiot, to be made fun of, just kind of like, we got a spot where we don't have a lot of money, let's just get him in there. But when I get into that spot, I tend to kind of take over the whole thing. And once I
That's
take over,
okay. So I wanted to ask you about that, just because that's something that, in a weird way, it's almost like if a student asked me about this, it would be like I wouldn't really know exactly what to say to them. Because if someone came up to me and they're just like, hey, like, I notice how the way that Ricky kind of goes about taking over what he does, like, should I try to do that? And that's certainly not something I would recommend for everybody, because you almost have to have like that certain pizzazz to do it. But that's something that you just can't help. Like, I mean, it this is fucked, because you just literally threw like a bunch of stuff at me at the same time that I wanted to ask you about. But I guess I'll start with, you brought up the fact that like you get used in a lot of roles where you kind of feel like you're just being brought on as the idiot. Does that piss you off?
I mean, so this is going to be a weird thing to say because I know what I am, but when people call me a comedy wrestler, it gets so deep under my skin. Like, it drives me completely out of my mind, because I do not see myself as a comedy wrestler. I think I am a funny person, and I certainly use that to my advantage, but like, it's all wrestling. It's all insanity. So I'm just trying to be the headmaster at the top of the parade, where it's all just ludicrous behind me anyways. So why not be ridiculous? I was in a seminar with Brutal Bob Evans and Tough Timmy, and they
Shout out
both
Brutal
made the
Bob.
same
I love
comment.
Brutal Bob. He's awesome.
Those guys are phenomenal. Even just following them on Facebook, like, just such positive people. I really like having them around.
It's a free
But
seminar
they
every day
made
whenever he drops a status. It's amazing.
it's crazy to me that young guys aren't paying attention to him, because he has so much knowledge. He's such a valuable resource.
Mhm.
But when I was at the seminar, they made the comment to me that you just have to make it the Pretty Ricky show. And I took that completely to heart and figured, well, I mean,
Oh
I
shit.
am not going to I am not going to do what Aiden Prince does. Aiden Prince is a phenomenal athlete, a tremendous talent. And if I tried to do an Aiden Prince match and then he followed me or went before me, he's going to blow me out of the water. So I need to do a Pretty Ricky match, and I need to make it my thing. And I personally would recommend everybody try to do that. Try to make it your own thing. I don't know if a lot of people understand exactly what that means. So that's kind of the trickier aspect of it. But I mean, to be successful in this business, I believe you need to be something unique, something that nobody's ever seen before. And, I probably haven't made enough money to really make a definitive statement on that, but that's at least what I'm trying to carve out and do.
Right. But here's the thing, though, is like, you're in kind of like that weird, at least I put you in there anyway. You're in that like class of dudes that you just look at as like these up and coming breakout stars, where it's just like, maybe they're not there yet, but like, that these dudes are special. Like, I throw you in there with like the War Horses and the Danhausens of the world, just because like, even Danhausen. And here's the thing, I got to give you credit, because I didn't actually know who Danhausen was until you tagged me in a random post one day, because he had put up his dates, and one of them was one of our dates, and you're just like, hey, Ben, book this guy. And I was just like, you've never asked me to book a guy before. I'm like, who is this? And then like, I went and checked out his Twitter, and it's actually kind of hilarious, because I just saw him put a tweet up the other day about that video with him and Warhorse, where they like do the fucking handshake thing. And I watched that video. Yeah. And that's what sold me on him. I was like, oh, this dude's great. And then I booked him, and we ended up using him. But then when I booked him against you, which was, I believe, the second time I brought him. Yeah, it was the second time I brought him in that you wrestled him, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He left a tweet where he was just like, I'm sure you remember, but he just left a tweet that just said, hey, America, this is the next one, and then tagged you, and I believe put a picture up or whatever, just because, like, that kind of performer can recognize that kind of performer, in my opinion. So first of all, kudos. Second of all, I think it was just kind of a shit fucking time, because you were on the verge of doing it. Like, it was happening for you. But at the same time too, you're also, you've kept busy, and you've stayed active both literally and figuratively, pretty much throughout this entire time. I mean, you've kept producing content. You have, if anybody's not watching this on YouTube and you're listening to Spotify, go watch this on YouTube right now, because this brother is in a Hulk Rules shirt making this thing fucking pop. He's looking good. That's what I'm trying to say. The brother is fucking jacked right now. He's looking good. So, and between that, you've actually been one of the few guys that have been getting back and active and all that stuff, and have actually worked matches since all of this stuff has happened. So, like, it just kind of shows your hard work and hustle and all that stuff. But I guess I kind of want to bring this back to the Danhausen thing real quick. You say that, like, you know, the money hasn't been there and stuff like that, yet all of these people are starting to recognize, and they have recognized how talented you truly are. Like, have you, what's like the weirdest recognition that you've gotten so far? Because, like, for example, last night, CM Punk finally recognized Danhausen and just put out like a fucking, like, you were very good at Twitter, because he just couldn't help it finally. You know what I mean? Like, Danhausen finally got like the recognition tweet that he always wanted, I guess, in a weird way. And I know that's kind of a dumb question, but like, what is the weirdest recognition that you've gotten from all this stuff?
So probably the weirdest thing for me was the first time I was working in America, like in a prominent position. I was at Old Wrestling, and Alley Cat was there, and she knew who I was, which I just kind of found crazy, because I assumed that my audience and my reach was located within Southern Ontario. So the idea that it was kind of breaking through was bizarre to me. And then Hardbody was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and when he came back, he said the exact same thing, that he would go to shows and talk to people, and there were people that just knew of my videos, knew who I was, and were kind of talking about me. I also saw a meme of myself, which was bizarre, because it was presented by somebody who didn't know who I was, or I don't think was even a wrestling fan, just a photo of me in a meme. And it was kind of like, how did that get out there? How did this happen? You know what I mean? But super cool to see.
What was the meme?
It was me in a red tuxedo with a cheetah print shirt, and it said, "We all have that one uncle at the barbecue." And just like, I wasn't in a ring, looked nothing like a wrestling show at all. And it was kind of, who made this? You know what I mean? But it was brought to my attention, and I loved it, because that's my face.
Please send that to me. I'm going to edit that in there. Oh my God.
Definitely.
That's hilarious. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. That's funny. So, speaking of Old Wrestling, I mean, that was something that, like, that had to have been kind of neat that you got booked for them, just because, again, like, that's one of those companies that certainly recognizes talent of your caliber, where, like, they recognize not just character, but they also recognize good wrestlers. And I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, just because I do want to circle back to that gap that that I feel that we both were able to help you bridge in between that, like, starting off and being known as a comedy character to being kind of known as a little bit more of an all well-rounded performer now these days. But that company kind of recognizes both. So you were able to get bookings with them. And I was so proud of you, to the point where I actually, you brought up the one time where they had asked you to work a show during one of the crossbody bigger shows. And I remember you coming to me, like, and you were like, so, like, nervous, and you didn't want to, like, let me, like, there was like this, I appreciated it, but, like, with, I don't even think I hesitated for a split second. I was just like, go do it. Like, cause I always want, like, you know, the people on my team to do well. And I want them to go and do, like, these bigger things and whatever. And how did that all come about? And, like, what's it like like, what's that process like? Just because they're such a different style of company.
So I got message from the promoter, and he essentially told me that he had seen none of my wrestling, but I believe Jody Threat kind of showed him a promo of mine or something like that. And thank you very much, Jody. And he loved it. He loved what I was doing, so he brought me in for it. I would say I had probably one of the worst shows of my life when I was there. Just happenstance, I messed up. It wasn't good. So nobody got hurt but me, which is a common thread throughout my stories. But ultimately, it wasn't the best showing of myself. So
Right.
for the March 28th show, that was the one that I was going to miss crossbody, which is very upsetting. But I was, and I don't want to give away any secrets here, but I was in a fairly prominent position within the show in Detroit, which just the idea of being on a big show in Detroit, like that's really moving ground for me. That's going to be a big deal. And that's right up there with the top of the list of the things that kind of got crushed during quarantine.
That
Just
I think,
heartbreaking.
yeah, I thought that was going to be like your springboard, to be honest with you.
I think a lot of people were trying, which again, just blows my mind that people are looking out for me and trying to get me to that position. But I also felt like that was going to be a big moment for me. So, it sucks that it got taken away, but like, I got to keep my head straight in the sense that like the world kind of fell apart. So if Pretty Ricky wasn't able to wrestle a show in Detroit, ultimately we'll get back there. There might be bigger problems to deal with first. So I'm willing to take it.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. Now, just, let me ask you real quick. Like, what went wrong in that match? Was like it just didn't gel with the opponent? Like, what?
So because it's old wrestling, there are different rules to the show. Just it's wrestled within a style that existed 100 years ago, essentially. And I don't know, a little out of the box. So trying to put myself into a different box and kind of figure out the parameters of it, it was just a new environment. People didn't really know how to take me. And then ultimately my shoulder popped out of place. That was the real problem. Just stupid happenstance. It's an old injury I got from skateboarding when I was like 16. So it just kind of something that happens every once in a while. And of course, because I was on one of the bigger stages I had ever been on, that's the time for it to pop out. Just the way my luck works.
Of course. Now, this is where I guess we can kind of tie back to what I was talking about before. Like in a weird way, I kind of understand why people, at least at the beginning of your launch as Pretty Ricky, where people may have looked at you and they're like, okay, this is a comedy guy. And the reason why I say that is because you're fucking making everybody laugh. Why that necessarily makes you a certain, like, if that makes you a comedy wrestler just because you're funny, I know that's kind of a weird, like, it's kind of a weird label to put on someone, especially when they're not attempting to be like a comedy wrestler. It's just a tool that they can use. How did you find bridging that gap? Because I know that's something that was a long conversation you and I had at one point in time. And it was something that we worked on very diligently. And that was the word I was looking for earlier. And I said vigilantly, and I'm stupid.
You heard what I said? Piece of garbage.
So anyway, yeah, I know that's something that like that was something that you and I worked on real diligently. Was there a moment where you kind of realized like, oh shit, like I'm getting away with this, but like people are only starting to think of me as this, and like I need to start to present myself as this? Like was there a moment that kind of made you like kind of sink all that in, I suppose?
It goes back to the idea of you saying that, Pretty Ricky's not exactly a character. And it's, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but there is backyard footage of me wrestling around with my friends when I was like 16, 17, something like that. We actually rented my old elementary school gym to film it, but it's terrible. It's the worst thing you'd ever see. I hope it never reaches the internet. But what I'm doing is not that far off from what I'm doing now as Pretty Ricky. It's just kind of cleaned up. So,
cleaned up? Holy shit.
With talents like, Speedball Mike Bailey, Fuerza, Aiden Prince, these guys are unbelievable athletes. And I'm just, I was on the U of T wrestling team, so I have a little bit of an athletic background, but I'm not going to be getting up there and doing those kind of flips anytime soon. Like, it's just not in my repertoire, and I'm terrified of blowing my knees out. So I needed to come up with something that was going to be usable and wanted on shows that wasn't me going out there and doing that, which relied on my personality, because I knew that I had something within that personality. I just needed to show it to the world, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that personality of mine is rather comedic. So people naturally assume it. But I don't know. I always found The Rock funny. You know what I mean? He was a
Yeah.
cut up. He was always hilarious, but he was still going for the heavyweight title. So
Of course.
I don't know, the idea of being kind of pigeonholed in that one spot as he's a comedy wrestler and he's just here for a goof. I didn't want that because I want the most amount of potential bookings and potential spots and opportunities moving forward. So ultimately, I guess I just wanted to be the most versatile performer and wrestler that I could possibly be, because those are the guys that I always looked up to. Like, so much of my stuff is modeled after The Undertaker. I'm just enthralled by what his character is. And I guess if you take a step back, like, he's pretty funny too. You know what I mean? It's a zombie. So you got to kind of take it with that grain of salt. So if you look at me less of, you know, oh, he's a comedian, and more of just, yeah, he happens to be hilarious, but he's also in a fight, is kind of the way I see it. And, you know, there's a classic piece of advice of, what would you do in a legit straight up fight? What would I do? I would try to make the guy laugh and then, you know, sucker punch him. That's what I would do. And then I would run as fast as I possibly can. So that's what I do when I'm in a match. I'm trying to win, and I'm trying to distract him. It's no different than, why is he kissing everyone? It's because it's not against the rules in wrestling. You're allowed to kiss people. They just didn't write that rule down, and it throws people off every time. Even if they know it's coming, they're going to be shocked when it happens.
It's true. That's actually excellent use of bending the rules. I can appreciate that. So here's where, like, I mean, I remember it. I mean, it's kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit, but this is a story that I'm actually really proud to tell, just because I don't think people realize how hard that you actually work towards this stuff and how bad it is that you want this. But like, when you first started working for Crossbody, it was you came in to work a pre-show match because it was you were bugging me about getting on, and I always I wanted to find you a spot. I try to, like, actually, you know, look long term, and I just didn't have any, like, spots available trying to plug you in anywhere. And
you try to book properly.
I'm trying. That's not saying that I do, but it's just it's an effort, at least anyway. And then there was an opportunity that came up where there was something that came up in the pre-show, and then we also had a seminar that day. And in typical Ricky fashion, which I'm sure that I'll find out later on this afternoon, it gets there a little bit late. And as you were getting in late, I think you even told me this, though, but I think it was like halfway through. But at the same time, there was somebody that needed to leave halfway through. And there was like this weird walk. And as I was earlier in the day, I had found out that Jake Jones, who was the Blue Ribbon champion at the time, needed to take some time off. He was injured. And if I remember correctly, I think I only found out about it like that morning. So I had no plans to take the title off of Jake Jones, and he was going to go for a bit of a run. And so I needed to find a better situation that day. And the wrestler that needed to leave, I was looking at him and I was like, man, I think that's the guy. And I think that's the guy. I was literally about to call his name, and I won't say who, but I was literally about to call his name. And as the fucking, like, the sound was coming out of my mouth, you walked in the door, and I just had this like weird, like, I caught my words, and I was just like, hang on a second. And then I looked at you, and then I looked at dude, and Jimmy Vandalay was walking towards me. I was like, hey, Jimmy, let me run something by you real quick. He's like, what's that? And I was just like, what do you think? Like, just give me your straight up opinion. Like, just be honest with me. I want to see, like, just give me your reaction. Imagine that at the end of the night, the new Blue Ribbon champion, Pretty Ricky Willdy, and he literally like started jumping around and was like, please do this. And I'm like, done. All right. Okay. So if it popped me and then it popped somebody else, like, immediately I was just like, okay, this is where we're going. And I'm like, it was, in typical Ricky fashion, as you have kind of mastered as a part of your career, but also this is advice that we try to give younger wrestlers all the time. Be in places, because if you're not in places all the time, even though you're not booked, the opportunity could be there. But if you're not there, then the opportunity is going to go to somebody else. So you got to get the fuck out there. That's why they say get the fuck to shows, right? So when you got there, not only did we find the spot that you were looking for, but like it as we've mentioned before, you took that, and it's kind of hard to say that Crossbody is anything other than the Pretty Ricky show at this point. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing where I was booked to be in a tag match with Santa Claus, if I remember that correctly.
That's correct.
Hell of a match. It was tremendous amounts of fun. But I mean, it ended up with me winning the Blue Ribbon Championship, which, not going to say that I'm just hanging out with it, but I mean, I do keep myself pretty clear here. And you gave me free reign, told me to do whatever I wanted with the title. And this was like fresh off the run that I had done with the Cabana match, where I had come back from tour. The biggest match on my docket was going to be against Colt Cabana. And I just promoted it for like 2-3 months. And then within a couple weeks, I then had this championship. And you said the same thing, just kind of go nuts with it. And I made it my whole thing. And I just didn't stop talking about it. I constantly had it with me. I went as far as I could possibly think of to go with it. And to me, at this point, when people see this championship, they do tend to think of my face. And I'm pretty proud of that, just marrying those images in people's minds.
It's very, very true. It's weird because seeing anybody else holding that in a picture, myself included, I was actually a Blue Ribbon champion back when that title first started. It just doesn't look right anymore. Like, it's just like, why are we holding Ricky's championship? Like, what happened here? Now, around that time, Holden Albright had been on my case for quite a while. Like, he kind of had this idea about wanting to try. I'm not going to give the idea completely away, just because who knows? Like, it's something that he might do. It's something we might do still. I don't know. But he had this idea that he came to me and he wanted to like sit down and he wanted to like legit fucking take me out to dinner. And like, he wanted to present like this package that he had. And I was just like, as he's pitching it to me, during the time that he was pitching it to me, I was just like, I already know what you're trying to do. And now it's just, it's not the time. It's not the time. It's not the time. So fast forward probably like a little over a year, maybe a year and a half later, all of a sudden I'm like at work and I'm driving. And next thing I know, all of a sudden that boom just clicked into my head, and I was just like, it's time. It's time. So then I kind of took his idea and I kind of like altered it a little bit, and then I messaged him and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And then he super on board, and that idea is what we call the Showcase series now. And the idea that I had with the Blue Ribbon Championship was because it was kind of getting a little bit lost in the shuffle on the main shows, I found. And I was just like, okay, I want a secondary title, but like, I've got to like redo the whole thing. Cause it just wasn't working out the way that I envisioned it in my head, but the title's cool and I like it, but like, what can I do to kind of put something back on it? So then when I realized that, like, when I'm trying to solve all these problems at once, it kind of dawned on me that the best thing for that title would be to make it exclusive to the Showcase series. So what that instantly made you was the main event of these shows, because you're the champion of these shows that haven't even existed yet. So we get to the first show, and we do the main event. Who the hell did you wrestle in the main event of the first show? Do you remember?
I want to say it was Jake Jones. I could be wrong about that, but I want to say it was Jake Jones.
Huh. I've done a lot of them. It's hard to fucking remember.
A lot of them.
So it's funny because I just saw NSW put up this thing the other day. They're like, hey, we've successfully ran our 60th show. And I looked at my calendar, like on my board, and I was like, shit, last year we did like 50. Like just last year. Like we were like 2 or 3 away from 50. A lot of
shows.
With Showcase shows, like regular all the fucking shows. There was just so many shows. So yeah, I get a lot. So I get confused sometimes. But anyway, so the first night we do the Showcase Series show, you did the main event, and it was good. Not great, but it was good. And I remember specifically when you came back to the locker room, I wanted to just be like, "Hey, good job. You did this. You did this. You did this." And then as soon as everybody started to kind of clear out, I was going to pull you aside and then just be like, "All right, so here's what I want to work on for the next time." I didn't even get the opportunity because as soon as I was like, okay, here's what I liked, here's what I liked. And I was just like, well, what did you think? And you're just like, fuck, I almost feel bad that I'm saying this, but whatever, fuck it. It's a podcast, whatever. You said straight up, you're just like, I don't feel like that was a main event match. What the fuck do I got to do to change my style to accommodate that into a main event match? And as soon as you said that, I had bells and fucking whistles and just like streamers and fireworks going off like of joy in like my heart and in my head, because I was just like, this fucking dude gets it. All right. And I think we probably chatted for like close to 2 hours at that point, if I remember correctly. It was a long fucking talk. But the biggest thing that I remember about that was like, we came back the following show, which was I think 2 weeks later, and it was fucking everything that we talked about. Like if you would have sat there and you would have made a list of everything that we had kind of gone over that he needed to just change, settle this, bring this action here, just a whole lot of different things. It was boom, 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 to the point where when you came back the second week after the fucking through the curtain, you were just like, fucking yeah. You're just like, you were so happy and you're just like, okay, like I'm feeling that. You could just see that you like like everything fall into place for you. You're just like, okay, I understand wrestling in a main event. I understand what went wrong there. I understand what went right there. I'm starting to get where I can implement myself into and you could just see like you fucking like happy breakdancing in your head. You're just like, I'm fucking getting this. And you're just, and it was smooth fucking sailing from there. Like it's been a lot of fucking work since then, but like, that goes to show you just kind of how much like you genuinely really do take this shit seriously.
I would say 100% everything that you just said, that is entirely accurate. That is very much the way that I went through it. I wouldn't say that I was like, I had figured it out by the end of that second match, but I was certainly on my way and I was feeling much more confident with it. I would say that like, and I'm not afraid to say this because I'm really not trying to be rude to anyone about it, but a big part of the reason that I left Battle Arts, which is where I was originally training, was because I felt as though Santino, Anthony, didn't see much potential in me. Just saw me as another guy going to the gym, which like I get because he's running a huge facility and he's dealing with a ton of low-level guys who don't really want to do anything in wrestling. They just want to say that they're a wrestler and they just want their jersey and that's kind of the end of it. So why would he waste his time? And to assume that I was one of those guys because of the body that I have, I completely understand that. So then to go over to Crossbody and to have you willing to take that 2 hours and talk to me about what it means to be in that position, what it means to have my face on the poster solely. These people are here to see me close down a show. I have to be able to give them something that feels like, yes, that justifies the end of the show. That was exactly what I'm working for. You know what I mean? I selfishly, entirely, I do want it to be about me. And I'm not ashamed to say that. That's what I'm there for. It's funny that you bring it up because I really hate patting myself on the back. But I'm going to. I was having a conversation with Hardbody recently, and Hardbody is legitimately my best friend at this point in my life. And like, we started discussing what it was like when I was still going to Battle Arts, and I told him the story that for a year while I was going to Battle Arts, I was essentially homeless, and I was living in my car. My day consisted of waking up in my car in a parking lot in Toronto, and I would skateboard to the CN Tower because I was working at the CN Tower for the Edge Walk, and I would do that for an 8-hour shift. I would finish that. I would take my shirt off, skateboard back to my car, eat a can of sardines, drive to Battle Arts, start wrestling practice until, 10 o'clock. Then we'd start weightlifting until 1 a.m. Then I'd hang out with Hardbody for an hour. Then I'd drive back to the parking lot and go to sleep. That was a year of my life. And when I said that, Hardbody looked at me kind of wide-eyed and went, Jesus Christ, you want this more than I do. And I said, yeah, I want this more than anybody alive, because these people still think that I'm a comedy wrestler and this is like some kind of a joke to me. I take this way more seriously than I need to. Like, I have way too much respect for wrestling because, again, it is just us kind of goofing around in our underwear. So I shouldn't be as passionate and serious about this as I am, but I don't know. Like, for some reason, this has always meant the world to me. So now that I'm getting some kind of success and people are willing to actually pay to see me, I feel like there's such a responsibility that I can't just let it down. I can't let it be some dog and pony show.
Well, you're not. I mean, that's one thing that I've really noticed about you over the last year is like you've taken that position because you took that role because we knew, like, we sat and we talked. I was just like, okay, so this is gonna be like your baby. Like, I mean, let's make this. This is where we're going. So like, I need you to fucking be that guy. And like, you know, on a week to week basis, like we challenged you both creatively, both in the ring. Like it's been a constant, it's literally just been constant growth on a week to week basis. And without the passion to do that, to listen, to go through the hard knocks and all that stuff. Like, I mean, you've really, because again, like if people, I'm trying to remember, but I think we're at like 33 showcase series shows. And that's not mentioning all the other shows that we've done. Like, again, last year we did, I think it was close to 50 shows that we did in 2019. And every single one of those, with the exception of maybe a couple, you were on every single one of them and were like the primary focus, whether you were in the main event or whether you were like just in a featured prominent match, whether it be the one that you did with Danhausen, whether it be the one that you did with Bo, which is still one of my favorite matches ever. You know how to steal the show. And again, like even like your reign as internet champion, like there was just this, you've taken all of that to heart, I've found, and you've been able to apply that elsewhere. So much so that I don't even know how many people know this, because I don't really see anybody mention it. I don't see you mention it ever. So tell the story about you wrestling for Impact.
Okay. So, and there is a good reason I don't bring it up very often. I was wrestling at CWO in the Rock Pile in Mississauga. There was maybe 6 fans. It was, barn burner of a show. As I'm there, sweaty as all heck, I get a call from Big Man Ortmann, and he tells me that there's a position open at Impact Wrestling and that I need to get to Battle Arts. And in that moment, I was terrified to go to Battle Arts because I thought Anthony wanted to beat me up. So I didn't want to get beat up by Santino. I was also quite pale because I didn't
know that.
I mean, I don't think he ever really thought of it that much, but just in my own head, I felt like I had upset him and he wanted to beat me up. And I just, oh God, I don't want to make him mad. You know what I mean? I'm a very nervous, paranoid person.
That wouldn't have happened if I was there. Like, with all due respect to Anthony, it's just that it's not like I would have like fucking fought him. I wouldn't have let that happen.
I mean, he wouldn't have done anything. It's no different than the last Battle Arts show that just ran. I was like considering buying a ticket because I didn't want the confrontation of, hey, get out of here. Because I would leave. I don't want to be disrespectful to these people.
I understand.
But yeah, for Impact, I was at CWO. I was pale because I didn't tan that day. My apologies. And I showed up at Impact. Try to do my best, but just it didn't click. It's that same thing that happened at Old Wrestling. On a bigger stage, I'm not as comfortable and things are a little wonky. If something's going to go bad, it's always going to go bad on the biggest stage possible for me. So I always need that second opportunity to kind of come through, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an okay match. It was against OVE. I was teamed up with Reverso. I'm super proud that I got on Impact. When I got the check in the mail, I opened it at my kitchen table with my mother sitting there specifically to say, look, I know this is a ridiculous path that I've taken, but I am doing something. You know what I mean? I am on international TV at this point.
That's awesome.
but obviously it wasn't enough to get a contract. It wasn't enough to get Scott D'Amore's attention and say, oh yeah, we need this guy on the roster. When, like, personally in my heart, and I know this sounds ridiculous, I truly believe that I belong on that roster, that I could add so much to the show. But I have to convince Scott D'Amore of that. It's not a matter of me believing it. It's a matter of me proving that to other people. So that's the next hurdle to get over. And I don't know, beyond much of like a photo of me with an Impact background and saying, you know, I was here, there's not a tremendous amount of clout. And I don't really want to just be, look what else have I done? Look what else I've done. But you're right. I probably should. Because I was on Impact Wrestling.
You did. You wrestled for Impact, which is, you know, that's, again, like, have a lot, like, that's something that you got to be proud of. I mean, like, you got to wrestle in front of you wrestle in front of a main stage. Like, you got to wrestle for one of the top, like, promotions in the world, which is a huge tip of the cap. It was a weird path to get you there. I got into a lot of trouble that day. I tried to pitch you. Yeah, I tried to pitch you for a different opportunity. I'm not going to get into this too much, but I tried to. There was a couple things that were open that day during the show, and I tried to pitch you for something that I thought would have been fucking perfect. Like, couldn't have been more fucking perfect. And if anybody watches Impact Wrestling and they're watching me say this, like, it just do the math. It would have been fucking perfect. So anyway, I pitched you for that role to somebody, and I don't know why. I have no clue why. Somebody else was not happy about it, and they fucking tore me a new asshole in front of a lot of people, and that sucked. But then weirdly enough, I was just like, okay, man, I think I might have fucked up. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why they got so mad. Like, I don't think that it was you. I don't know if it was me. I don't know if, like, so-and-so were just having a bad day. I don't know what. But needless to say that, like, it caught me so off guard that I was surprised that I still had a job that day. And then I was kind of surprised that I looked over at the board and sure as shit, there's your name. And I'm like, okay. I think we just got punching bagged for maybe no reason. I don't know. But you ended up getting that spot. And then my stupid ass, because this is kind of certainly my, I'm going to take responsibility for it, but I sent you out to the wrong music. So people are in the audience and they just hear OVE, Ohio versus everything. And then out comes Ricky. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. And you know what?
I might have fucked this one up.
I don't even know if it was that, or, like, honestly, just the fact that it wasn't "You're the Best Around" by Joe Esposito. I don't know. It was kind of like my rhythm was off. I wasn't used to the little nuances. It's something that I took totally for granted. I didn't expect that to be as big of a deal for me. But yeah, I don't know. That really just kind of gets me in the right mindset and right where I need to be for it. So when it was something else, it was kind of just the rhythm was off, and that's the way I described that whole match. It just, I don't know, it just didn't click. The rhythm just wasn't there for me. So I will say this, on one of my last shows at Destiny Wrestling, I wrestled Ray Bernardo, a used car salesman. And as soon as the match was done, I burst through the curtain and I ran to Scott D'Amore and I said, "Scott, you got a contract for me?" And he said, "Well, I did." So I think we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that goal.
You're bridging the gap. The gap. You just maybe approach it a little not so stabby next time.
Yes, probably.
We're just going to take back the stabby. But hey, progress, right? Progress is being made. He understands that it needs to be drawn up. So this is great. So it's funny because in a weird way, I'm kind of glad that was the first match for you in that circumstance, just because it was taped for like one of their like European European explosion. Like, I don't even know if it fucking made it in North America. So not a lot of people here saw it. I don't think if anybody did. But at the same time too, I think that that's probably the best for the best, just because you're able to get that first one out of the way and just kind of, you know, because with essentially everything else that has your career is kind of patterned on, like we've kind of noticed that like maybe the first time doesn't necessarily work, but then you figure it out and then all of a sudden it's just fucking smooth sailing from there. So I do think that you'll be set up a lot better next time. But not to say that that match was a complete waste either, just because one thing that I particularly notice, especially with like extras and like people that are being brought in for those roles into matches, I kind of tend to watch now just to see if they understand TV wrestling at all, or if they just kind of be independent wrestlers in a TV match, if that makes any sense to you. I look to see who's working, like what different cameras I'm looking. There's a whole lot of things that I'm looking at. And the one thing that I can proudly say is that like every single one of our crew, like when they've been presented those opportunities, has very much looked like a fucking natural in regards to the TV wrestling portion of it. It's just a matter of figuring out the rest of it. Like that's where I get like what you mean by that. Like, but someone like Alexia, for example, like she kind of gets how to implement her style for TV wrestling now, but she also has a lot of fucking reps doing all of those same things now. So I've just noticed that like our crew tends to stand out with a lot of that stuff. So I do think that luckily, if we're presented another opportunity like that for you, then you'll definitely maximize it. But I guess kind of what I wanted to know was like, if with everything that you've presented, again, like we've discussed that, like you've you kind of started out comedy, you've kind of bridged through that gap, at least that I feel right now. With everything that you're doing, and especially with like the podcast that you're doing, like you've really kind of presented yourself a certain way. You know what I mean? Like, so with that in mind, I genuinely wonder myself, because I know that this isn't really anything that we've discussed, but like, do you have like an end goal or like an end, like a destination where you want to be, like, or are you just kind of fucking winging this right now?
So, I mean, it's a double-sided coin or a double-edged blade, something like that. I would say that I came to the realization last summer. It was definitely at a crossbody show sometime through last summer, where I truly felt like I had nothing left to prove to anybody other than myself. I know, because I have wanted to be a wrestler my entire life. There are stories of me telling people I was going to be a wrestler when I was 5 years old, and I had spoken about it so much and talked about it so much that if I didn't go through with it, I would really have some egg on my face. So I felt like last summer I had reached the point where I have nothing that I need to prove to anybody in my family, any of my friends. I really went out there and I actually did what I said I was going to do. For me personally, though, I am a long way from being done. Like, I don't know. I have to have the perspective of the fact that I've become a wrestler is crazy. The fact that it was actually kind of working is beyond understanding. And the fact that the only thing that's derailed my momentum has been a world-ending pandemic is just like, I could not have guessed that if anybody had tried. You know what I mean? So it's
fucking mind-blowing,
it's been a wild
isn't it?
ride. Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I don't see this being done until I'm on WWE. That's been something I've been obsessed with my whole life. And it's not pro wrestling, it's the WWE. And I don't know why it's like that. It's like Disney for me or something. I have this vision of me being on that stage, and I feel like I need to get there. As I've gotten older, and I've noticed that a lot of independent wrestlers aren't particularly happy in that situation, I don't know, I got kind of weird feelings of like, but that's where I want to be. So my ultimate goal is I want to be the first wrestler signed by Netflix. That is ultimately where I want this to go and what I'm driving at. But I definitely need to get on WWE within that time span.
Did Big Show technically beat you to that, though? Because like he had a Netflix show?
So he has a show on Netflix, but I want to be like a wrestler for Netflix. You know what I mean? I want to have an hour-long special where it's part of everything that I do, and it culminates with a match. Is the vision that I have. So it would involve, stand-up comedy, Santa Clausing, podcasting, all leading up to a wrestling match with as big of an entrance as I could possibly think of on this stage in some theater or arena is the ultimate goal. And yes, I do recognize how preposterous all that sounds, but I mean, everything's been ridiculous that's happened so far. So if it's worked for so far, why not keep going for it?
Dude, I was just thinking about, like, you see everybody like, oh, it's 2020. And I'm trying to think of like one of the greatest things to come out of 2020 because of, I'm trying to think of the positives. And it just dawned on me like the other day, I was just like, motherfucking Mike Tyson's fighting in 2020. This is what we're getting. Like, this is like the world pandemic is bringing us fucking Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. of all goddamn things. And those are legitimately my two favorite boxers ever. Sure, they're 137 years old. I don't give a fuck. They would beat both of our asses if they had one hand tied behind their back. Like, they are G's. So yeah, I'm fucking down to watch those two have an exhibition fight. Fuck yeah. 2020 is great, man. But that is good to know that you've got a destination. But like, do you see yourself, like, how the fuck would Pretty Ricky, do you think that character would be able to transition to WWE? Because there is some gentleman who has completely tried to hijack your fucking name for no fucking reason, even though he gets tweets on a daily basis being told that, yo, drop the fucking shit because, there's a real one of these guys on the indies. But I don't know, like, do you see your character being able to be presented in that way? And how would you feel? And sorry, I want to add on to this. And how would you feel having, like, imagine like the worst horror story that you've heard from people, like getting their fucking creative balls kicked in the WWE. Could you see yourself handling that if someone tried to do that to you and stifle you creatively with that?
So, I mean, it's a great point, because one of the best parts about the independent wrestling world is we're given such little direction, and you have so much room to just kind of fill in the outsides. And I mean, I don't know what it's like on the inside. I've heard stories, but I mean, that's all third-hand knowledge. I can't really say that it's going to be like that. I feel like it's a similar thing, though. When people are in that position, they typically complain about things like, having to put pumpkins on their head or having to shoot slime and just seem ridiculous. To me, that's all in my wheelhouse. And that's exactly what I want to be doing now. I just don't have the money for those kind of props. So if people are willing to give that to me, it's only the more powerful. The vision that keeps me awake at night, I'm not kidding about this. Like, I get tense when I start thinking about it. There's a story about Kane being in the ring at WrestleMania 14 as The Undertaker's making that big gothic entrance. And I think that was the first time they had druids and the big torches. Like, it's a spectacle.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And just the image of Kane in the ring when there's like lightning and thunder going on in the arena and it's, flashing against his mask. Apparently, Paul Bear checked his pulse during that entrance and said, "You need to breathe. You're going to have a heart attack." Now, my vision personally is me being in the ring, the Fiend coming out and having Hardbody check my pulse, telling me I'm going to have a heart attack and just saying it's worth it. I've been waiting for this. So, I mean, do I think that I would be the best opponent for the Fiend? Probably not. I mean, they got monsters like Brock Lesnar on the roster, and I don't look like Brock Lesnar yet. But I don't know. The idea of him tearing me apart, if that's what it has to come to, for sure. Just that entrance, that electricity, I feel like the duality of those two characters can be something so special that again, it's not a matter of me believing it. I just have to show that to the world and convince them of what I can see, because I know it exists. It's just a matter of getting it out to the world.
I get that 100%. That's fascinating, though, just because I'm always curious about what we all have that fucking, it's like the Twinkie that dangles in front of the fat kid while they're running on the treadmill. It's just like, like we all have that thing that kind of motivates us and to try to get us to that finish line. And, a lot of them, they sound so unrealistic until they're happening, and the one thing I've realized, and this is one thing that I've taken from friends of mine who have become successful, is don't be afraid to dream like that, and don't be afraid of working towards that crazy fucking goal. Because again, like, it sounds crazy to everybody else, but like, if it sounds realistic to you and it sounds like it's something that could happen, believe me when I tell you, you can make that shit happen. Like, it's a lot of hard work, obviously, but I mean, you're certainly not afraid to put that hard work in. I mean, I know that. I'm sure that a lot of other people across the world are finding that out at the moment, and will be finding that out soon. But yeah, I think that you're. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, exactly what you're saying. I have a family member, I guess, who's not the most supportive of me. So for my entire life, I would say that I wanted to be a wrestler. And the answer always came back, you can't do that. That's not going to work. You cannot be a wrestler. But then I became a wrestler. And the issue became, well, I mean, you're not going to be like a big time wrestler. You're not going to be on TV. You can't really do something with this. But then I got on TV, and then it started to like work for me. So then I go to the house, and the same thing, but you're not making millions of dollars. When are you making millions of dollars? And at that point, it's like, yeah, you're not making millions of dollars either, and you work a boring job. So what game are we playing here? You know, this has been impossible the entire time, but for some reason, I made it work up till now. So to any young person listening, please, you know, have a good plan in your head, be able to feed yourself, but shoot for the stars.
Oh yeah. There's, you know, you saying that reminds me of this amazing Dave Chappelle story that he once told, where I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan, by the way.
Me too.
So you probably know this story then. He was having this conversation with his dad, and his dad was just like, when are you going to stop being a comedian and get a real job? And he's just like, well, what do you mean? He's just like, well, what are you going to be, like a teacher or something like that? Because, like, you know, it's a very few people that make it in comedy. And his answer to his dad was, he's like, define making it. You know, because in his dad's mind, he was kind of like in the very much similar manner. It was just like, well, are you making millions of dollars? Are you on TV? Are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. And so Dave asked his dad, he's just like, so define making it. And he's just like, go on. And he's just like, don't you and Dave, so this is what Dave said to his dad, he's like, don't you think that if I can make, like, for example, like a teacher's salary doing comedy, doing what I love, I may not be like in the major movies, and I may not be a millionaire, but if I can make, even at the minimum, like a teacher's salary doing comedy, wouldn't you consider that making it? And then his dad just looks at him, starts laughing, and he just says, son, if you keep that attitude, you're going to fucking go places. Probably didn't say fucking, but it's my show. I can say fucking, so fucking, you know?
No, absolutely. I can.
And
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I can see exactly what you're saying. And the idea that, like, there's so many people that are going to be negative about it, that are going to tell you they can't do it. And I personally believe that a lot of that comes from the fact that people are miserable when they're older because they never tried for their dreams when they were younger. And, like, I get it. It's not the safe route. You know what I mean? But it does come at a consequence. It does come at a price of, you sacrifice your youth to play it safe. And I'm not willing to do that.
Yep. I even heard Kenny Omega say once that he's just like, the dudes that kind of made fun of me in high school for trying to become a wrestler, and that I was doing this stuff, and, you know, on independence and whatever, when I first started, he's like, a lot of those guys, you know, have the white picket fence and, like, the good job and the house and the family and all that jazz. And he said those same people now contact him, and they're just like, man, I wish that we would have followed our dreams, because we're fucking miserable, you know? And I'm not saying that anybody who has that life is, you know, is inclined to be miserable, but there certainly is this feeling of, you know, even if you don't get your dreams, like, there's something satisfying about just the chase, and even just knowing, you know, like, I remember saying to myself back in the day that like, because the WWF at the time when I was a kid was all I ever wanted too, you know, like that's the only thing I ever wanted. And I was told very much so by a lot of people that that was never going to be a thing for me. I was never going to make it. I was too fat. I was blah, blah, blah. I was this, I was that. I was fucking whatever, you know? So I always believed them just because I was like, well, these guys know what they're talking about. And I clearly don't. I'm just the young guy. These guys are the guys, you know? So, so it was shit that I always took to my head. And that's, you know, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have for people is like, don't listen to fucking, like when people tell you and try to set limitations on you, they're being assholes. Like Chris Jericho once told me to my face, he's just like, you know, if I can make it, you can make it, because I'm just a dude from fucking Winnipeg. He's just like, it's just a matter of working. Like that was the first time in, well, I think I've only met him one time, but like, it was the day before I first started training, and I went to a SmackDown that was in Toronto for the sole purpose of meeting him. And then when I did, like, that was the fucking advice that he gave me. And I've literally carried that with me this entire way, even though I might not have taken it to heart until, you know, even just like a few years ago, but that's when everything kind of clicked in, where it was just like, you know what, you can't let people set limitations on you. You've got to be able to just go for it, because, you know, you never know what's going to happen unless you put the work in. So I remember saying to myself that I was just like, I'll never be satisfied until I at least have one WWE paycheck. And I don't care what it's from. I don't care if it's a match. I don't care if it's from fucking somebody having to throw fucking ketchup on me in a backstage vignette. I didn't care. Like, I just wanted to do something. I just wanted one opportunity to show them who I am. And if they liked it, great. And if they didn't, at least I knew that I fucking had a shot, and I wasn't going to sit there the rest of my life and just wonder what if, you know. And
Exactly.
I got to do it a few times, but I think what that ended up doing is it just led me to other better opportunities. You know what I mean? And it's weird because going back to what we were talking about before, and I know it's probably not the greatest idea to say this on a podcast that's just going to be on the internet and out there forever until I take it down, because who knows?
Oh, boy.
Oh, no, Ricky's falling over. Big bump on Ricky's camera. Big bump. But I'm just going to continue talking because I'm sure you can still hear me, because this is all just hilarious to me at this point. This is so telling of my story and the finish of the story pretty much right now. Ricky, are you alive still?
I'm good. I spent so much money on this setup and it's just falling apart.
So anyway, you know, all I wanted was just that opportunity. And again, I just with my experiences, I don't think that that's something that I would personally wish to do for 250 days a year, if that's what their schedule was like at the time. Maybe I just had a bad experience. I know I had a bad experience, and I'm not saying that it can't be a good experience for anybody else. You know, I used to hear horror stories about people saying that Impact was like a fucking horrible place. And for me, it was like the coolest thing that ever happened to me. It was like one of the best things that ever happened to my career. It was one of the best things that ever happened to my life, just because I learned so much from there. I have nothing but positive things to say about my time there, with the exception of I was an idiot and probably maybe pitched an idea when, I don't know, maybe I didn't have any business doing it. I don't know. I got to take responsibility. But I met friends for life there. I acquired skills that I'm going to be using for the remainder of my wrestling career and for the time that I have, you know, this promotion. And I'd like to think that other people are going to benefit from the experience that I was able to pick up from Impact Wrestling. So to me, it's hard to say that I would change my path, because it's hard to say what my path would have been otherwise. But I feel certain that I'm probably going to be most happy doing what I'm doing with Crossbody and with any other company that uses me. Like I've done production work and whatnot for Revolution, which was the all women's indie that was doing stuff at Battle Arts. And those was a lot of fun to be able to work with those girls. And like there's other companies that wanted to use me for those situations and stuff like that. But I think that, again, like I realized that maybe the WWE wasn't the best thing for me. But if I didn't get that experience, I'd kind of just always be wondering, you know. But who knows? Maybe they'll fucking call me out of the blue one day and they'll be like, hey, we want to offer you a shit ton of money to come and work for us. And I'll be like, I got nothing better to do. Yay. Let's go do that. So maybe one day I'll eat these fucking
I feel
words.
Exactly what you're saying. I completely get it. Like, I don't know, you hear such horror stories and not being allowed to be the entity that you were on the indies, and it feels almost as if you're selling out to go to the WWE. But it's like, I don't know. This has been such a constant force in my life. I've been watching the WWF since I was born. It's been in the house. You know what I mean? My whole family was a big fan of wrestling. So exactly what you said, the idea of getting that one paycheck, maybe it's not the exact fit that I want, but I wouldn't be comfortable if I don't get at least one paycheck just to say that I was there and that I did make it to that level. But I mean, like, you know, looking at it honestly, the idea of Impact as a better fit, meeting people as actual people and not in that such a corporate environment, I don't know, like it is such a crapshoot, but it's still such a lure that you have to go there.
It is. It's weird. You kind of keep breaking up and sounding like a bit of a robot there. I hope that's not from your camera crashing or whatever. So I apologize to anybody that's listening to this on Spotify. You're just like, what the fuck is happening? Just technical issues on his end this time, because fuck you, Ricky. It's your turn to fucking eat some audio shit issues instead of me. But no, man, like I think you're on, no, it's all good. I think that you're on a good pace right now. I think that once things come back, you know, to normal, at least anyway, or even somewhat normal, like I think that you're certainly on people's radars, and just keep doing what you're doing, man. And we'll keep fucking working in the lab, like we're going to be doing here as soon as we're basically done filming this interview. And that's what we do, is we'll keep working and we'll keep getting better, and we'll be prepared for when those opportunities arrive, man. And that's all we can do. And I just want to say kudos to you for doing all that stuff. Now, I do want to end this with the rapid fire set of questions, just because I feel like, again, I'm kind of enjoying this, just kind of steering away from the regular format and just kind of shooting the shit and whatever. And who knows, maybe some people don't like the format questions, or maybe they don't like this free flowing conversations, but I'm enjoying this. So, the only thing I want to kind of at least remain consistent is these rapid fires, just because I do find that they're a lot of fun, and it's kind of good just to kind of break up the monotony. So you ready for some 10 questions? Now, you've already done these before, but now at least you'll have a little bit of time to, I guess, have thought about your answers, I suppose.
I will say to the listener, my memory is terrible, so I definitely don't remember the questions, and I'm very excited for this.
Tremendous. All right. So what is your favorite match that you've been a part of thus far?
I'm going to say the Colt Cabana match or the Fuerza match from October 5th at Crossbody. That was, right up there with one of the best things that I've ever done. I had driven in right from Barrie, so it was halfway through. Didn't know what I was doing. Fuerza kind of just threw me out there, and we ended up having a pretty good match. I was pretty happy about that.
You two work so, like, you guys have really good matches. Definitely go out of your way to watch that one. Wait, was that on the showcase or was that on a bigger show? That was
so we did them on both, but the one from October 5th from the bigger show.
That's what it was.
That was, I believe, your 3-year anniversary show, I want to say.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. That's right. Who is not on TV right now other than yourself who should be on TV?
I mean, Psycho Mike is always the one that comes to my mind of just, I feel like there is no chance of me making any money in this business because he's not on TV as somebody's champion. He is outrageously talented.
It's fucking criminal that he, and I said this during like his intro in the podcast that I just did with him a few episodes back. And if you guys are listening to this and you haven't listened to the episode with Psycho Mike, do yourselves a favor. Like that was where we kind of like, that was where I realized to just drop the format and just talk, because like me and Mike had a amazing chat, because it had been a minute since him and I actually sat down and had a face-to-face like bro talk, you know? And I definitely feel like if people want to be a fly on the wall with two people like just again, catching up and really kind of throwing some insight at one another. That was a fucking great one. But, you know, Mike is always one of those guys who is the answer to a lot. Like he's probably the most, like if we were sitting there and we went through every episode and I was like, if I was to tally who people said for that one, by far he gets the most amount. Him and RJ are like the two guys that always get the nod on that one. So this is where we're going to switch things up a little bit. Who's your favorite band?
Oh God, I am so bad with music. Honest to God, I have a workout playlist that's pretty well strictly WWE theme songs and 80s, like just terrible pop song.
Okay, so then let me rephrase this. So if you had to, like, you're working out, you're lifting, because God damn, look at those fucking give one, give two, yeah, fucking flex it up. You're lifting. Bro, you're fucking lifting. So let's just say you're like in that final fucking set. You are just dragging ass. Like you are not having everything feels like fucking garbage. You need to go to that go-to song in your fucking headphones to be like, I gotta fucking go. What's your go-to?
It's Run DMC D-Generation X song, The King of Rock. Who? The King of Rock. What? Yeah, that one gets me going.
I was like, okay, he's gonna at least throw a different song that's not wrestling. No, you fucking.
That's literally all I got. I don't know anything about music other than like Blink-182 because one of my friends was a big fan of that when we were growing up. I do not listen to music. I listen to podcasts all day, and they're generally about wrestling. This is my life.
That's very fair. All right, so then this will be an interesting follow-up. What's your favorite sports team?
Oh my God! Again, like I've never. The Brantford Bandits. I don't know. I've been on multiple sports teams that have not won a game the entire season.
Are the Brantford Bandits a real thing?
They were in the 90s.
What are they? Is it a baseball team? Oh, hockey. Okay.
Hockey.
Holy shit! All right. You know what? Hey, Brantford Bandits, you're in the fucking column. So congratulations. Who's your favorite opponent been thus far?
Oh, man. Again, I'm going to say like Fuerza just because he's so talented. And I think I genuinely do get under his skin. I think he doesn't particularly love my sense of humor. So when I start messing with him out in the ring, then he is genuinely getting hot at me. Yeah, that's
I
always love that.
I don't know. I don't know if it's that, because you got to remember he's just a grumpy motherfucker. Like he's just like Grumpus is a real nickname for that guy, just because like he genuinely hates human beings, and I think that's why I love him. I'm kind of in the same boat, but I don't know if he hates you, but I think he's just a naturally like he is the real life version of the angry cat.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? You just have to know him to love him. That's all. But yeah, that's fucking hilarious. What's the biggest goal that you have set for yourself that you feel like you've accomplished?
Oh man, like I'm going to say Impact Wrestling, or just, just kind of having people wanting to pay to see me wrestle. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there are places in Ontario that if you put just my face on the poster, will sell tickets. And to me, that is the biggest compliment and the craziest thing that's happened in my life.
Well, that's fair. So what's the next goal on your list that you feel that you need to accomplish and that you are goddamn well positive that you're going to?
I think I need to run a show. I think is kind of where it leads to. Like, I want to keep wrestling, but you know, like there's only so many shows running right now. I can't say that I want to be out 3 times a week every week because the opportunities just aren't there. So I think I want to try my hand at running a show, maybe in the spring of next year. That seems like a likely possibility. And then I guess a cinematic match, because I haven't done that either. So something along those lines of just trying to make sense of what's happening in the pandemic, right?
Right. Oh, that makes sense. I always ask for 5, but I mean, go ahead and just list off whoever you feel like kind of comes to your head here. But like, who are some up and coming names, like brand newer, that come to your head that maybe people need to watch out for?
Okay, so I would say Mikey Jenkins. I have big hopes for that kid.
Now,
He just
Mikey
looks like
Jenkins
a
is one of,
wrestler.
yes, he's one of our students. He hasn't had a match yet, so he's going to be hard to like go find footage on, but like
Mhm.
he's getting there. Like he's on that last stage, like where he's like starting to get it. Things are starting to come together for him. Like he just needs to keep putting in the time, a little bit more consistency. But yeah, that kid's going to be fucking good when he gets out there.
Absolutely. I would also say that I was training with Axel recently, who the audience may know is the crossbody referee.
Mm-hmm.
He's good in the ring. His timing, his feel, his movements. I can also hit him pretty hard, and he doesn't whine about it. He hits me pretty hard. I feel
Axel's a
like it was the
fucking
first
G.
time. Yeah, I felt like it was the first time that we've ever really worked with each other, but we did that at the last practice, and like, oh, this guy's good. I really enjoy being in there with Axel, and I don't know what his hopes and dreams are in wrestling, but like if he wants to be actually wrestling, then he should be doing it because he's pretty good at it, and I think that's kind of flying under the radar for a lot of people.
I think it's flying under the radar for him. I think that he feels that he doesn't think that he could be a wrestler, and I think that he's dead wrong. Like I think he's actually
Yeah.
a really talented dude. I think that it's just you kind of get into everything what you've put in, right? And I think that if
Mhm.
he, I feel like maybe he thinks that he's kind of got a like a glass ceiling just because he's reffing and he's good at it.
Mhm.
But that's also what I've noticed about him is that like he's that kind of guy where all he needs to do is just like apply himself to something. And then once he applies himself, like it may not be day 1, it might not be day 5, but eventually that dude's going to get it. And like, he's not just going to get it. He's actually going to be very, very good at it. And like, yeah, he's a gem, man. But what about like guys that are actually working right now that people might be able to kind of search on YouTube?
So a couple names that I would put out there, I would say that Marcus Gold came in, and a lot of people looked down on him, didn't have a lot of high sights for him. But the kid's like 17 or 18 years old, and he's got a world of potential ahead of him if he continues to train. He has been showing marks of improvement, which is impressive.
Is
I
that
would
the
say that.
is that the
Sorry.
kid from Hamilton that like literally dresses up like Gold member?
Yes, entirely.
Okay.
So, like, does he have some stuff to clean up and work on? Of course, but we all do. And I
Right.
think he has demonstrated that he does have some potential moving forward. Kyle Brooks is another one who's just like crazy talented, just super young. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And if he has a little bit more of that maturity, he has all the talent in the world to go tremendous amount of places. The one that I really got to call out and has blown me away and impressed me to the point where I have made a vow to myself when wrestling comes back and we're up and running again. I have a couple of titles at multiple different promotions. I want to defend every title that I have against this guy because I think he is going to go huge when independent wrestling comes back, and it's Young Love. And I don't know if anybody's seen him recently, but the kid has put on like 50 pounds of muscle. He's got a dark tan. He's got new gear. He is primed and ready to take this place over. I cannot say enough good things about Young Love.
Good.
Could he be fooling me? Absolutely. That happens all the time. But if he keeps this kind of pace and this kind of momentum, he's got nothing but bright things in his future.
That makes me really happy to hear just because I've told the story a couple of times, but like he was that kid that I wanted to hate like really, really badly.
For sure.
But he showed up to, I believe it was the first Showcase Series show because I threw it out there to like any young wrestler. I'm like, yo, just come down, do the right things, show up, get there early, blah, 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 blah. And if there's something there, we'll find you a spot. And when he showed up, he was like, I think maybe one of like 2 guys who did. And it pissed me off because I was just like, not using him. And then, because again, I wanted to hate him. Second show happened. He showed up and he was he was like just standing there in the corner. Like he was helping, but like he was like kind of just real nervous and real shy. Cause I think he was kind of picking up on the vibe that I really wanted to hate him. And then I can't remember if it was Albright or Wheeler, but one of the 2 mentioned to me, they're just like, yo, what about Andy? And I was just like, what about him? And it's like, give him a shot. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, because it's on you. I'm like, I'm going to ask. It was one of the 2, and then I went and asked the other one. And then I was like, okay, I'm willing to give dude shots if people that I genuinely, respect their word and all that jazz. Someone gives me, hey, use this guy. Cool. I'll give him. I'll try to give them a shot. So I gave him a shot. He did good, and then he kept coming back. Like, he's literally doing all of the things that I was asking. And if I'm being completely honest with you, he was the only guy outside of our crew that was showing up and doing the right things. So in that sense, he listened and applied, and now I love the kid like he's one of my own. And that just kind of goes to show you that that's where you're going to earn a lot of your opportunities, is just by being there and doing all of the paying your dues and doing the hard work that, people require. Because, Andy's at shows every fucking weekend. And I know that he's been bringing Kyle with him a lot as well. And Crystal Moon. And I know that they were heading out and they were doing a lot of stuff before all this jazz. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that kid. So definitely, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So what's your proudest moment that you've had outside the ring?
Outside the ring. Honestly, one of the proudest moments that I've had was my brother announcing to the family that him and his girlfriend got engaged. Because me and him kind of came from a bit of a tumultuous upbringing, I want to say. So marriage didn't seem overly likely. And he was somebody who a lot of people wrote off when he was like 17 that he was just a bad kid and he wasn't going to get any better. But he has entirely changed his life around. He is such a role model to me in terms of doing the right thing, being a respectable, responsible adult. And just, I don't know, when he announced that he was getting engaged, he had bought a house, he had a good quality job, and it was like, oh, he's really pulled himself together. So just, I don't know, seeing how happy he made the family, how much everyone was swelled with pride over the fact that, like, yes, he's done it. He's accomplished what he was going out for. That was probably the proudest moment that I've had outside of the wrestling world.
I like that. And to finish off the rapid fire questions, and this is the one that I look forward to the most with a lot of these ones, especially I'm quite curious to see what your answer is. What is the best piece of advice that you can give to somebody who wants to do what you do?
Do what I do? I'll tell them there's not a chance. I'm the only one who can do what I do. In terms of like being a wrestler or trying to be an entertainer, it's, you have to know what it is that you're selling. If you don't know what your product is, it's very hard to sell that. You know what I mean? Like, and it goes right back to Young Love, the idea that it was never a bad wrestler. He was never a bad guy. He was just super generic. He looked like everybody else and didn't really separate himself from the pack. At the last show that I saw him, he has clearly and definitively separated himself from the pack. And, there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. But like, that is the intention. You need to separate yourself from everybody else, because every company in the world is looking at this pile of wrestlers and going, okay, who can I make money with? You need to stand out and be something that people are willing to pay money for.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
So it's the same thing Brian Pillman said way back when: if you want to make money in wrestling, you have to be something that nobody's ever seen before. So just trying to accomplish that task, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's great advice. I'm going to finish off. Fuck it. We'll give it a shot. I always like to ask if the guests have a question for me, just because I've been kind of leading the conversation. So is there anything that you've been kind of curious about that maybe we can dive into from the opposite perspective?
So I'll say two questions right off the bat. One, do you have any toys on the way to your house? And two, who is the young guy from Ontario Independent Wrestling? Not like a name, but who's a young guy who you have earmarked of when Crossbody comes back, he has to be on the show?
Do I have any toys on the way? Technically, yes, because Albright picked me up the 10-inch Andre Funko.
Nice.
And I've got a Shane O'Mac for him, and I've got some toys that I got to give him for Fuerza as well. So I technically do have one on the way. There are some toys that I'm trying to get. Like I saw that I woke up this morning and I checked my phone and I saw that Albright found the fucking AEW line. And
Yeah.
I literally I stopped my Madden game and fucking threw a pair of pants on and ran to the Walmart. And I'm like, do they have it? Do they have it? And they didn't have it. So that was kind of bummed out. Now, as far as somebody from Ontario that like a young guy from Ontario that I'd like to start using. Was that what the question was? Sorry.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
From Ontario.
And it doesn't have to be like a guy who's never wrestled or anything like that, but just maybe somebody who hasn't been on the crossbody show before, who's not, Josh Alexander level of a name, but somebody that you think would fit very well in the crossbody roster.
Honestly, at the moment, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but at the moment, it's not anybody from Ontario that sticks out to me that I would want to bring onto the card. It's the Buffalo Boys. I'd want the rest of them. I think Puff and Blackwood, I think, would be a huge welcome addition to our roster. I think that they're both very good dudes. And another guy that I would actually like to really start using as well that's really stuck out for me is Megabyte Ronnie.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that I genuinely feel that those three dudes in our locker room would fit. I think that they would be I think that in front of our audience, I think that they would be incredible. I think just having those guys and Garcia, it's just good to have like on any show. And that's not a knock to Kevin Bennett. Bennett's just he's the champion for another company, and it's for a company that I don't do business with. So it's again nothing against Kevin. Kevin's just doing his own thing, and that I genuinely wish him the best with all that stuff because Kevin's a fucking good dude, man. I really like Kevin. It just sucks that there's that fucking like. It just sucks that there's that thing there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it.
But it is what it is, and I don't think that it bothers me, and I don't know if that bothers him, but whatever. Ontario, though, man, that's a rough one, and I hope that nobody takes this the wrong way, but like I'm just trying to think of somebody who is like really stuck out in the last little while that I'd want to use, and the only one that really has is Bianca. And we were kind of already on the way to start using her. Like Bianca is, Bianca's been working very, very hard. I'm sure that you remember that show where she went face first into the ring post and it fucking split her, not her head, not her, it split her fucking face open. And it was scary. And not only did she finish the match, but like stayed in character like the entire time. And just like most dudes I know wouldn't have done that, wouldn't have been able to do that. They would have fucking panicked. They would have freaked out. I was just sold on her from that night forward, just the way that she handled it, the way that she is in the locker room, the way that she just carries herself, the way that she's so open to feedback and she's so open to suggestions, because this isn't a knock on her father, but I genuinely feel like she is trying so hard to step outside of her father's shoes, which is honestly the best thing that she can do, because I think when you try to rely on that too much, people don't like it, and it kind of it's just a hard pill for people to swallow. But people will again, I think, I don't know for sure, but I think that people are a lot more inclined to accept her hard work by just going out there as Bianca. And do people know that she's Santino's daughter? Maybe if they do the research, but she isn't out there fucking trying to shove it down anybody's throats. It's certainly not anything that she promotes or any of that stuff. Doesn't hide it, because that's fucking be kind of rude, but I mean, it's not something that she uses to her advantage. So looks like $1 million. Like just everything about her is what you are looking for in somebody who's up and coming. Because I know that there may have been in like where people might have thought that she kind of had that like, well, I'm Santino's daughter kind of thing. I've genuinely not seen it. And I've been super stoked with her attitude, and maybe it's growth. I don't know, but I think that we got her at a good time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her progress when we get back. That's the one that stands out for me. Again, no offense to anybody else, but there's a lot of people that I want to see succeed. Like I really want to see Jimbo. I want to see Jimbo take over the world, man. I don't think a lot of people, if you haven't seen Jimbo Jones, like I don't think you understand that, like how special he is. He's just everything that you want in a performer, like in a human being, in just every which way that you want to check the box. Like the only thing that the box that maybe you can't check it, he's not going to have like a technical Dean Malenko style wrestling match, but like he's also still fucking brand new, and we forget that a lot of the times just because of how seasoned he comes across as like an actual, just like as a performer. So there's a lot of people that I want to see succeed. But yeah, I think Bianca's a good answer for that one.
I would just throw out there that the only reason I didn't mention Jimbo when I was talking about up-and-coming talents is because I think of me and him as very much peers, so I don't see him as somebody on the come-up. But yeah, Jimbo is phenomenal and such a good guy to be around.
Yeah, and like it's hilarious, man. Like there's been times where, and this is where I was like, oh man, this kid's good. Like he's good for the business, and like he's a good brother. There was one time I was watching him get fucking sick to death, like right before like he was going out for a show. Like he was not there physically, like he was just, I had never seen Jimbo so deflated before. And like, he just was hell bent on going out there to perform and wrestle. And like, he was literally like holding his guts, keeling over as his music's playing. And I'm just like, I'm so sorry to do this to you, man. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, you could just fucking like, I was literally at the point where I'm like, I'll go out there and wrestle for you right now. And he's just like, nope, I feel great. And he just convinced himself and popped through the fucking and you would have never goddamn well known if you watched that match that he was literally on the verge of like death. Like, and when he got back, just dropped. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, that's something that a lot of people can't do. They can't like not sell. Oh God. I was just like fucking, I was really, really proud of that kid. Like you know where I'd really like to see Jimbo end up, and I think that it would be such a great platform for him, just because I know that he would know what to do with him. I think Jimbo would be perfect in Alpha One.
Okay.
I think that he would fucking flourish there, like, because the way that Ethan Page kind of brings like guys up and takes, oh God, I think that'd be really good for him, especially here in Canada, at least anyway. I think that Jimbo would kill it in companies like C4. Like, I think that like Jimbo's that kind of guy where like you put him in a match with like Jock Sampson, and those guys, they're just so good together. You know what I mean? But because Jock Sampson's kind of like that 80s style wrestler. But I also genuinely believe, because we've done this with him before, where we've tested him and put him in there with different guys. But like, I think if you put Jimbo in there with a guy like Speedball Mike Bailey, he'd be able to like, maybe not like be on Speedball's level, but he'd be able to keep up and be able to like be a realistic portion, like a part of that match, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I completely get where you're coming from. Certainly his character is the strongest part of it. His personality is the most exciting thing, but like he can still go. Me and him have had a couple of bangers that I'm actually pretty proud of not just the fact that, oh, it was an entertaining match, but like we actually took it to each other, and that's always fun.
Man, I'm gonna end it on this story, because there was one night where it's literally still one of like my proudest moments as a booker, as just like a guy in the locker room. Like it was the night when you and Jimbo were doing the main event for one of the Showcase Series matches, and like we were trying to figure out how to go about telling the story, and like we got to that point where like I say this a lot on the podcast, and I don't think people truly know unless like you've been a part of the locker room, but like our locker room is so fucking tight. Like it's so tight. We were trying to come up with ideas, and like it literally became this thing where like people from the fucking woodworks were just tossing in like, hey, why don't we try this? Like, hey, why don't we do this? Hey, that works, but what about this? Like boom, 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 to the point where like my buddy Mike, who's a writer for the Edge and Christian show on the WWE network, like he was there helping out as a ring announcer for the night. And like he was even just like, oh, okay, well, what about this? And it got to the point where like we, as like a collective group, like we had nothing, and then all of a sudden we came up with this idea that we all just looked at one another and we're just like, yo, like this is a team effort, whether this bombs or whether this goes like really well, like this is pretty fucking cool. Like we all just were like, boom, and like everybody looked at me as if they're, and I'm like, yeah, let's do all of that, like let's try it. And I think to this day, that was the most powerful ending we've ever had to a fucking showcase series show. Maybe even like one of our shows, period. Like that, the audience was off the fucking charts hot for that finish. And I'm going to try to remember which show it was, and I'm going to link it in the description below, but my God, you go out of your way to watch that, because that's just what happens when you get a lot of creative people in the room together who just genuinely love wrestling, that want to see everybody succeed. And that's why that's one of my prouder moments, is this like as just being a dude as a part of that team, because like, God damn, that was like, you can stress this more to anybody, but like that was such a team effort that night, and it was just so cool to be a part of.
No, without a doubt.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of the Big Ben and Friends podcast. Again, I am your host, Big Ben Ortmanns, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Big Ben AF podcast. Big Ben is angry, rather. And then you can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Big Ben AF Podcast, as well as on Facebook under the name Big Ben and Friends Podcast. You can find the show on YouTube by just going to youtube.com/Big Ben AF Podcast. And please, if you're there and you're not subscribed already, hit that little subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment if this is something that you're enjoying. All those little things genuinely help. It doesn't take any time, really. It costs you nothing. It shows appreciation, and I would really appreciate your appreciation. So you can also find the audio version of this show on Spotify. There's a couple other platforms, I'm pretty sure, but fuck those. Go to Spotify, because that's where I'm trying to get my numbers up. I've mentioned before that you can find me personally on all my social medias at Big Ben is Angry, but you can also find the Crossbody Pro Wrestling Academy, as well as CBPW, on all of our social medias at CBPW Academy, all one word. You can find the Crossbody Pro Wrestling shows for the first couple of years. You can find the Showcase Series shows, as well as a bunch of other doozies that we've dropped. We've actually dropped the Pretty Ricky versus Bo show, which was just so great. We've dropped that for free on our YouTube page. Go check all that out. Go subscribe to that. It's youtube.com/Crossbody Pro Wrestling Academy. You can also find us on independentwrestling.tv. Use the code Crossbody to get 5 free days. You can find so many bangers of matches on there, including Pretty Ricky's match with Danhausen. That is the match that got Danhausen to drop that beautiful tweet about Ricky being the next one. So go out of your way to watch that. And last but not least, you can support Crossbody Pro Wrestling and our amazing wrestlers and our hardworking staff by heading to prowrestlingtees.com/Crossbody Pro Wrestling, where all of the proceeds of the shirt sales get split between our wrestlers, the hardworking production staff, and the gentleman who has made the designs. And as Pretty Ricky can vouch, as he is our top-selling shirt salesman in at least Crossbody Pro Wrestling, this genuinely does help the performers. So if you want to get yourself a Pretty Ricky t-shirt, if you want to go and get your hands on one of his old tag team partner, Madman Fulton, there's a plethora of gentlemen that have shirts on there. But you know what? Support Ricky, because this is his podcast, so go buy a Ricky shirt so that way he can get paid. Crossbody Pro Wrestling, prowrestlingtees.com/Crossbody Pro Wrestling. And Ricky, where can we find you on all of your socials? And also, please plug your new podcast as well.
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube at ProWilldy. That's PROWILLDY. You can find me on Facebook, PrettyRickyWilldy.com. You can find all of my merch at ProWrestlingTees.com/ProWilldy, PROWILLDY. I also have a podcast. If your listeners have more time in their day, you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or you can get the video version of the podcast on YouTube. It's the Blackballed Podcast. That's Blackballed with an ED. You can find us on Twitter at the Blackballed P. You can find us on Instagram at the Blackballed Pod. So please, any and all support is greatly appreciated. And Ben, thank you so much for having me on this show today.
Ricky, thank you very much for doing this a second time. I did make sure to have my mic plugged in, so this one episode is actually going to go out to the world. I appreciate you for doing this. I appreciate you for just being, honestly, dude, I appreciate you for being a part of my life. I love being able to work with you as a coach. I love being able to work with you as a promoter. I love having you as a friend. You're genuinely one of the good guys in this business, and I really hope that you end up making a fucking $1 million a year out of this business one day, because you definitely deserve it. Go support this man, and that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And you know what, young man, I will see you in about an hour and a half when we go and back into the lab and get some work done.
Absolutely. Just one last thing before the podcast closes. I did use the Pro Wrestling Tees money that I got this year and bought a trampoline. So thank you very much to everybody who subscribed and supported. I love trampolines. Thank you very much for having me on. And I've really appreciated all the help, support, and love that you've given me since we met last December. 2 Decembers ago, whenever you started helping my career.
My pleasure, my man. And we will see you guys probably next week for an episode that I don't quite have booked yet, but I'm sure will be a lot of fun.